it spring already where you are?
Well, I wouldn't go. Well, I mean, it's sunny, but it's pretty cold. You know, it's still quite nippy. But
And
yeah, I
we're
mean, at least the
and
sun.
we're live. Sorry, and we're live.
Oops.
Okay, okay. Hello.
Pasha usually knows that when I give a warning that I already turned on the background picture for the stream, and that's a moment to to keep silence
Oops.
And
for a
typically we're
minute or
talking
two.
about the weather. Marvelous.
So yeah, but that's nice beginning for our live stream. Hello everybody, it's iBookBinding's live stream. Today our guest is Roger Grech, and printer, bookbinder, and teacher. Hi
Yeah.
Roger, nice to have you here.
Hello.
Um,
Right.
I'm Stepan Chizhov. I'm in Windsor, England. My co-host is Pavel Voronin. He's in Belgrade, Serbia. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
hello
losing it.
from both sunny and hot
Yeah,
Serbia. We already have basically summer, plus 28 today, so
good
I
for you.
Very
can't wait.
nice.
And
No, it's a bit nippy here. It's a bit nippy. It's
yeah,
sunny, but it's nippy.
but it's well at least here in Windsor the weather is quite nice. We decided to do some gardening today, so it's sunshine and pretty nice. Roger, from where are you joining us?
I'm joining you from Shipley in West Yorkshire. It's like in between Bradford and a little town called Saltaire. So it's yeah, we're in West Yorkshire
Okay, nice.
and it's quite nippy, but at least it's dry for a change.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Finally, that's true. So we have. I see that we already have some viewers both on Facebook and YouTube. As usual, I invite our viewers to firstly to share their comments, and if you have any questions during any moment of our talk, please post a comment, and we'll use the first opportunity we have to pass the questions to Roger, and hopefully Roger will answer them. If Roger isn't able to answer the questions, we'll just keep them for our next guest or whatever. And
Yeah.
if you are ready or willing to tell us, we already have some comments related to what I wanted to say. If you are willing to say from where you are joining us, it's always a pleasure to know from which country, city, town, locality people are watching our live stream and talking to us. So we already have Elizabeth Westland from Sweden joining us on Facebook. Hi, Elizabeth. Nice to have you here. And any other comments are welcome. Please check the description of the video. There are some useful links there. Firstly, there are links to Roger's website and Instagram. I think that's the two links I posted there. Anyway, I think that covers most of the things. Most of the visual
Yeah,
things
pretty
you
much.
can learn about Roger on the web even in 5 minutes or so. And there are other links like link to our Patreon account. Please consider supporting us on Patreon because we pay for editing of the videos, we pay for research, we pay for some other things, and iBookBinding's live streams and podcasts are fully funded by the money given to us by our patrons. So it's really crucial for us to have this support. You can even support the Patreon, not pledging any money, just to stay updated and to get news about our future live streams and podcasts. So do that at least. Of course, subscribe to YouTube because if you subscribe to YouTube channel while watching the video, it boosts everything. But yeah. Anyway, returning to our guest, for today we probably will talk about some books, some bindings you made. You plan to show us something. There
Yeah, I'll
probably
show
will
you.
be
Yeah.
a short workshop tour, so please stay with us until the last moment because usually we do the workshop tour at the last moment of the live stream. And that's the standard approach for us to ask our guests first to describe how they got to making books, how they started doing the craft. So what was your story? What
Well,
is your story?
I started out very early stages when I was doing my foundation course um, a long time ago. And I think I needed to make a book, and I just sort of I actually I did illustrated a book, and I thought, well, I might as well make it into a book rather than just have these single sheets and just put them on the wall. You know, so I thought, let's have it as a book. And this is pre-internet, so you know, I couldn't just go on and get a YouTube video on how to do some binding. So I had to go to the library and get some instructional manuals, and I actually, not obviously the original one because that's stealing, but I did buy it again, and it's here somewhere. There it is. So I learned from this, the Ivor Robinson Introducing Bookbinding.
Oh, I know this book.
Yeah. And you know, that's how I started. I learned from that. And it didn't really progress much further than that. But I mean, I did sort of do a few bindings here and there, but nothing great. Then I went on to my degree, and I started doing again a few, you know, I started to take, printmaking became my main focus at that time. So I learned printmaking, you know, etching and stuff on the foundation course. And then when I went to art college, the print room was phenomenal. I mean, it was huge. It was really well equipped. I mean, it just blew my mind really. So that's where my focus lay in printmaking. But it was still quite illustrative as well, and you know, sequential and stuff. So I carried on doing a few odd books and stuff like that. Then at that time, I don't know if it's like that in most colleges these days, but all 3 years seemed to mingle. It wasn't like there was separate areas for different years. And a lot of the third years were doing books, and there was, you know, they wanted to know if they could find someone to bind them for them. So I sort of said, well, I can help you out, you know. So I helped the third years out making their books for their shows and stuff like that. And then so it just became more and more that I was making the books, but it never really progressed more than sort of flatbacks, nothing sort of like more advanced, no leather. It was always cloth, and whatever was in this very small cupboard down the corridor, that's whatever we used, you know. So that's kind of how that stayed. Then when all that kind of finished in all the colleges at the time, I started working at art colleges and stuff. And again, just teaching very small, you know, inductions in basic binding and stuff like that. But then it kind of got to the point where I thought, well, I'd like to take it a little bit further. Then one of my colleagues, Sarah, she got the Jen Lindsay book out of the library. You know, the famous tome, got it out of the library. And we sort of thought, well, when it's quiet times, we've got this bloody great big workshop. Let's just see if we can work through it. So we kind of did. I mean, it was embarrassing. I mean, I really cocked up in a big way. Right? I ignored so much in my hubris. I just ignored. I don't need to do end papers. Oh, I'll be fine, you know. And then I ended up with a really disgraceful looking leather book at the end of it. But you know, so I went back and did it again.
I had students like you. I definitely had.
I mean, the thing is, I was supposed to be the teacher, not the bloody student, and I was rubbish. It was awful, you know. Yeah, it just did not come together. But that was about, you know, once you got to the end, I thought, oh, I really should have done those end papers properly, you know. So yeah, so I went back and did it again. But you know, it's one of those. So that's when the leather kind of work started, because we couldn't. I mean, I couldn't afford to go on like book courses and you know, weekend courses in fine binding and stuff like that. So I thought, well, the only way I'm going to do this is if I do it myself. So, you know, the amount of different kinds of knives I've gone through trying to learn how to pare leather was to find the one that would work for me was just ridiculous. And trying to sort of see.
Did it feel that at that time that these courses of fine binding courses were as expensive as they are today for today's young people? Can you try to?
Yeah, I mean, I was a technician, so I wasn't earning a great deal. You know, it wasn't like a lecture or anything like that. So I wasn't earning a massive amount. And, you know, and you've got your mortgage, you've got your family, whatever and stuff. So these weekend courses, I think they were like, you know, 500, 600 quid or something like that. And I didn't feel like I could really invest that.
Yeah.
In thinking, you know, and you know, just going away, I'm just going to pop down to London for a couple of days, love. You know, you'll be all right. It just didn't, you know, I didn't feel like I could do that, you know. So it didn't feel fair. So I basically, you know, just invested in little bits of leather or stuff like that to try and work it, you know, to try and do it myself. But it took a long time because, you know, there's not many things out there that or at least there might be now, but there wasn't, you know, how to pare leather. You know, there's no little videos. There was no, you know, and the books or any texts weren't particularly clear. So I thought, well, I'm just going to have to keep doing it until I get it right. You know, but
even the small, well, sort of small part of this process of paring leather sharpening the knives is a process that
Yeah, I mean,
you probably should be taught, in person and not
exactly
any other way.
Well, I mean, I mean, the sharpening side, I've got like a slight, penchant for like sharp objects. So sharpening was never really a big problem. That's another story. But so, I didn't feel so bad about that. It was actually just finding a way of just doing it, and thinking, is the blade sharp enough or is it me? There was always that kind of question. The way I actually eventually did learn how to pare leather was when I started working for Stephen Conway. And it was one of those things where if when you're given a huge amount of leather to work on, by the end of it you've learned how to pare leather. So I mean, one week we were working on a Russian edition for a Russian company called Grech. I think that's how you pronounce it. I can't remember. I don't know if they're still around. And so one week I cut all the leather. I think there was 200 panels of blue leather.
Yeah.
Pentland, I think it was. And then the following week I was hoping he might have pared it by the time I got there for the next stage. And I just, and I always get there a bit early. So I let myself in. And the stack of leather was still there with a little note saying, a little bit of paring for you, Rog. And I'm like, oh, here we go. So, right. So by the end of it, I could bloody pare leather. Do you know what I mean? It was, I was sore, but, so now I don't fear the leather like I used to, but at the time it was quite hairy, quite scary. So yeah, I mean, so it's like kind of been a sort of a natural progression from working in education, realizing that I wasn't really taking the binding much further than a flatback, and then slowly moving on from that, doing a little bit on an evening. That's when I set up the workshop in my basement at home, so I could sort of take it a little bit further. And then, but it didn't really go leather-wise. It didn't really go much further. And then I think I got contacted by. Well, I started working. I did a few things for a guy called Nick Lowering, who's got a little press called the Print Project. When I show you a tour, you'll see his prints on the walls. He does lovely posters and stuff. I did a few little small jobs for him. But he had a friend called Pat Randall, so he runs Nomad Letterpress, which you probably will have heard of. And so, Pat contacted me eventually, and was talking about doing a book for Hannah Cousins called Coastline, and that's this one. So we were just talking about it, and then one day I was down at it was the Oxford Ways Goose kind of print fair type thing, not the fine press one, the one they do, the other one they do, and it was kind of next minute he turned up with a paste up. So I was like, all right, we're doing it then. Oh, this is really good. So and from then on, I started doing that. So it's just it is just a basic, simple flatback, but it's beautifully illustrated with Hannah's lino. It's just a tour of the LA coast. See if I can find you some nice prints. I mean, beautiful linos and stuff like that. They were just gorgeous. So that was a real pleasure to work on. But that took, and that's, I can't remember how many copies. I mean, it will be in the back. It wasn't a great deal, but they took me ages because I was doing them on an evening, like on an evening after work or maybe on a weekend. I mean, so there's 105 copies altogether, but there was like 15 or so that were, I think they were quarter leather with the leather 4-edge strip in a slipcase with a folio of prints. And then there was the super special one that had like a cylinder box and stuff like that. But they took me far longer than it should have been for any binder, really. But that's because I was just doing them on an evening every now and again, and it was just like quite frustrating. So that one went, and then I think after that, I think the next. I mean, I did a few other bits and bobs for other binders, other printers like Graham Moss and people like that. And then Pat came back with the book that pretty much changed everything, which was 2020 Vision. So that we talked about that for quite a while, and then we're just making mock-ups and all that sort of thing.
And when
by
was
that
it?
point, I just sorry.
When was it? When did it happen?
Well, we were talking about that in 2019, maybe a little bit earlier, but we didn't get much more than chat. But we were doing some mock-ups then, and at the same time, and then it got more obvious that this was going to happen. And I was doing other things as well. I was teaching at York College at the time as well. I say teaching, I was more of a technician type person. But And so I was doing other bits and bobs, and I was doing others for other people as well in evenings. It was getting tiring. I hit 50, and I thought to myself, I think it might be time to make a decision. Do I do both still, or do I try and pick one or the other? And I remember driving home one evening, and I got to some traffic lights. I'd done a lot of evening work as well. I was pretty knackered. And I just woke up to cars bibbing me because I fell asleep at the wheel, and I wasn't moving. I was like, oh, Christ. And that kind of changed my mind instantly. I thought, well, maybe it's time to make that decision. So I handed me notice in. And then I left York in December of 2019. And so I was self-employed after Christmas, basically. And so Pat arrived with all the sheets for 2020 in February. And then the world ended in March. You know, so we all had like COVID. It was like, oh, sweet Jesus, what do I do now? Do you know what I mean? Christ, I just left job at the wrong time. Never mind. So, but so there was panic, like there was panic in most people, I imagine. But I had all the sheets for the edition.
Yeah.
And people were still doing the delivery and stuff like that. Okay, you know, the board could be delivered, all that sort of stuff. So everything seemed okay. So I just carried on. So you know, and Pat kind of like looked after me a bit, and so I did it again because I was working in the basement. I could do it in batches, in smaller batches, which meant I had like a sort of a monthly wage, if you like, you know. So it kept us alive for ages. So that was good.
Yeah. So you're a COVID survivor.
So 2020 was the. Yeah, I mean, we survived. You know, so we survived COVID, so that was all right. So that was 2020. You know, slipcase. That was the standard copy, and it was just. I mean, it was beautifully. I mean, the blocks. So Pat printed all the type, all the type pages, and Anna Parker printed all the blocks. I can't remember how old Anna was, but I remember saying that if I printed as well as Anna did when I was her age, I'd been, you know, I probably wouldn't have changed. I probably would have stayed a printer. I mean, they are stunning. So. If you're lucky enough to own a copy of one of these, I mean, the printing is outstanding. You know, it's beautiful. So that was the standard copy, and then we did they all seem to like it in 3 states. So there's like a standard copy in cloth, and then there was a quarter leather, again with a portfolio and a slipcase, and then there was the ridiculous special that it had the full leather book with an onlay, which was just ridiculous. And then there was, you know, and the portfolio, and this companion copy that was extra if you bought the special with the collector's cut. So I think it basically, Nigel Hanway was the person who kind of commissioned it, and it was like his project really, and he picked 19 different wood engravers and him, so that's why it was 20. Sorry. But you know, he loathed to miss out a few extras, so he basically also picked some other ones, and made this as the collector's copy. As a, you know, so there was like some lovely ones there and stuff on a lovely Sonoma paper.
So and these are all wood engravings, right?
All wood engravings, yeah. So, but they were all 3 different sizes, so they all had to fit in one Solana box. So it became quite a slight nightmare with different blocks and different levels and tiering and then they tell you they want 30 of them, you know, and it's like, sweet Jesus. I mean, it took me long enough to make one, but you know, people seem to like the box more than anything else by the looks of it now. So that seems to have worked out well.
Good.
Yeah.
I'll interrupt you for a moment because we have a flow of comments both on Facebook and YouTube, and I think Pavel had a question for you after I finish, or I don't know. Maybe Pavel also wanted to read comments from people. So we have Robbie Cheney from Nashville, Tennessee, in the United States. Elizabeth Rideout, good morning from Boston, Massachusetts, United States. Kathleen Christensen, Cornwall on Hudson, New York, USA. We have lots of people from the US today, and I guess we have chosen the time, right? Josie Robert McDonald from Canada, Nigel Dermott from the UK. Pavel Voronin is commenting. I don't know who's that and from where he's joining us. Marie-Hélène Doussa from France, and that's on Facebook. David Hennington, hi from Ottawa, Canada. Marie Rebello, hello from Chicago. Han Fleet, hello to you all from Lancaster, UK. Patrizia Vignoli, hello from Bologna, Italy. And Your Long Shadows, Norway, signing in. So we have a pretty wide geography today. Nice to have
That's
you
all right, isn't it?
all
That's
here.
very heartwarming.
And again, if you have any questions to Roger, please post them, and we'll pass them to Roger, and well, we'll see how he answered them. If you have any questions to us, to Pavel and I, well, you can do that as well, but I'm not sure that we will answer them. Anyway, and again, please check the links in the description. There are lots of useful links there. Subscribe both to our Facebook and YouTube. Instagram, whatever. Subscribe to Roger's Instagram because there are some nice bookish things there. So, Pasha, did you have anything to say? Anything to ask?
I wanted to get back a bit to the point where you said about how expensive it felt and how, and as Stopper noted, it still very much is. And I wanted to ask you, and if you're uncomfortable answering this, please don't. Do you think bookbinding has a class problem? It certainly has a certain reputation, you know, white man's art and all that. I don't think that's true. We certainly talk to bookbinders of all backgrounds. What do you think?
I kind of, well, it depends on the kind of what people, you know, I mean, for me, what I tend to do is the majority of work that I do is limited edition press work, which is not cheap. So there is a definite kind of classing there, if you like. Although, I don't know really. I mean, there probably is a class structure there when it comes down to it. Because I mean, these are, I would class these as luxury items. When you see the price tags on some of these, not everyone's going to be able to afford them. I can't afford them. Do you know what I mean? You know, if I have one, it's usually because it's a duff copy, or it was a prototype. It's never usually like a gifted copy, unless for some. I mean, Pat always lets me have a copy, which is lovely. I class these as my my retirement. You know, it's how I'm going to make. You know? But like so yeah, I think there definitely is going to be some kind of structure. I mean, the courses. There's so many courses I'd like to go on, and some of them are quite reasonably priced, to be fair, and some of them are are also very expensive. And I think a lot of the time, the really expensive ones are when it's involving expensive commodities. So leather, it's not cheap. Leather isn't a cheap thing, you know. So, and you know, sometimes I think maybe it shouldn't be anyway. You know, it was a living thing, so maybe it shouldn't be cheap anyway. But sometimes it can be inhibitive when the price is quite. You know, if you're doing a lot of something. I mean, I always try. I mean, it's one of the things that's when you start to invest in a piece of leather to try something out when it's quite possible you're going to mess it up. It puts you off. You know, there's that sort of thing. On a basic binders level, if you know when you're starting out, that's why I always try. I mean, I've always got like buckets. If you look up there, absolutely shed loads of offcuts. You know, and it's all it's all the stuff that I really enjoy working with. So if anyone wants to try it out. You know, they're more than welcome around here. You know, just come in and play with some leather until you learn how to do it. There's no point in messing up something expensive when there's buckets of scraps that you can use. You know, but on the other side, I think I mean, there's not one of these books that I've bound that is I would say excessively priced to any kind of level of your pocket. But there are some. I mean the standard copies of a lot of these books, they're still expensive, but I think they're more kind of accessible. And to be fair, when I'm working on them, I always seem to actually be drawn more towards the standard copy than I do to any of the specials. I always feel more happier with a standard copy in my hand than a super duper special. And it's not because it's leather or anything like that. I just think sometimes they're a bit, I don't know, overly designed. I mean, I'm designing the damn thing, so it's not, I find that the simplicity of a standard copy is far more pleasing and pleasurable than sometimes a super duper special. I don't like even when I'm doing a special and I've got a hand in a design. I don't like to go over the top for various reasons. I mean, I've always been happier with a simple design rather than something that's really crazy for me personally. But on a technical kind of thing, you don't want it too crazy if you're going to be doing you know, hundreds of them, you want to be, you know, you want to be able to work with it and keep it, you know, regular, and, you know, not identical, because nothing's identical, but as close to as identical as possible.
You know, many binders share your taste. Certainly, Richard Minsky comes to mind. He collects trade bindings and has been collecting for quite a while. And he
Yeah,
also talks about how
yeah,
he enjoys the streamlined product. If you can make something this good in hundreds, it
yeah.
says a lot about your craft.
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, and it's obviously a lot easier doing that when it's like the standard copy in cloth as opposed to something in leather. When there's so many variables in leather, there'll be, you know, there's a mark here, there's a slight, you know, the blade slip there, whatever, you know. So with a cloth binding, there's a lot more kind of standardization of the whole process, which is, you know, I find that quite pleasing. A lot of people find what, you know, if, you know, I think what I do, I enjoy it. It's just, you know, there's something incredibly pleasing about seeing a stack of books, and they're all identical to me personally. But other people will find what, you know, they won't be able to do it because they've got, I don't know, a low boredom threshold, or, you know, they say, you know, I wouldn't be able to do what you do. I'd get bored too easily, and that's fine. I don't really get bored, you know. There's nothing really that bores me apart from some British soap opera. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, I can't watch any of those. Do you know what I mean? You know, it's like, get on with it. You know what I mean? It's like, so it's like, this is, you know, for me, the perfect kind of, you know, job for me to do. I just thoroughly enjoy it. I like the process. I'm probably incredibly OCD, and I'm probably getting even more so as I get older. So anything like this is just perfect for me. I absolutely love it, you know. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's the ideal kind of job. I think the ideal fit for my personality, just working on something again and again and again. I really enjoy it.
Good. And that's probably the best advice for anyone who is only starting to do bookbinding, is to look for something that fits your personality the best. Because I would hate it making 100 copies of the same book. I would hate it to make even 10 of them. And I had to do that during my career as bookbinder, and especially in I worked with the libraries in repairs and restoration, and sometimes they give you something like 100 copies of the same book, and you need to do something about it. And it's just it was so it was always a real problem for me. But anyway. Just finding something that fits your personality is the best thing to go, and best way to go.
I think so. I mean, there's some elements that I do find a little bit tedious, you know. And once that element of the process is done, I feel quite happy, and I know that that's done. I can move on, you know. But on the whole, every element needs doing, and I just crack on and get on with it, you know. I think that's part of the kind of attitude. It's like I prepare everything. I set up the area, and I just get it done, and, you know, I just keep on going until it's finished. That's just the way I see it. It's just a job that has to be done, and you carry on. And then when it's finished, you can sit back and think, I've done that well. You know, I'm quite happy with that. And then you can just shut the door and walk home and go home at night. It's just, you know, I like to take things in stages, because that's how you get through a huge job like this. You know, there's no way of. And that's why, I mean, with this new space that I'm in now, being able to work on a full edition in one go has made all the difference. Whereas before, I've been working in my basement. So like 2020, I'll be doing those in batches of 30 or 40. And there was 300 of them, you know what I mean? So I had to keep going backwards and forwards and starting again, you know, and it was all right. But there were moments where I thought, this is getting quite tiresome when it comes to maybe with the tipping. I mean, there were seven or eight tippings in each book, and some were folded, and some were this and some were that. So to get past those stages was fine, but you knew you'd have to go back to it next month or the month after. Whereas, you know, now once that's done, it's done. You know, I can push it away, and it's lovely.
What about a young apprentice or two?
No, well, I mean, I have now. It was one of the things when I worked in the basement, I used to get like emails from people who obviously didn't know where I worked, trying to be, you know, asking to be like you know, an intern or help out. And I said, well, it's very kind of you, but it's in my basement. It would feel a little bit creepy. Do you know what I mean? Let's go down to the cellar. I mean, it just felt a little bit odd, so I couldn't really agree to that. And then I moved here, and became more visible. You know, people could see where I was now, and people now and again would ask. And I've, you know, I had a few friends help out with some elements and stuff like that as well. Like my friend Stuart, he helped out with a lot of lining work and stuff. And then recently, a lass called Jen has joined me now and again to do some work on, especially on Life of Pi. Just just simple stuff, but just slowly bring her up through through some techniques to see if we can sort of take it a bit further. But yeah, I mean, that may be the next stage, maybe sort of like trying to get maybe more of a regular apprentice, or someone to come in and help out. I mean, I have kids, obviously 3 kids who but I don't think they have an interest really in what I do, but that's fine. They've got their own interests and I'm happy with that. But it's, to be fair, whenever they're here, I get really sort of anxious, like they're going to walk into something sharp, or or fall over, or I mean, my youngest seems more enamored with the sack truck than anything else. He just wants to be pushed around in it, so there's not really much time to have them out. But so yeah, so an apprentice would be good, but I have a bit of a kind of a control issue. I mean, I'm sure a lot of self-employed people do as well. So it's very difficult to hand over the reins to something or an element and not feel anxious especially when my name's in the back of the book in the colophon or something. I just feel if I've not been there right from the beginning, it feels like it's a bit, how can I hand it over? And I'm sure a lot of people have that same issue. But it's going to take me a little while to get over that, I think, at some point. But at some point, I suppose I'll have to. I'm getting older. I mean, it's not, I can't do everything. So I'll have to move on, at some point. We shall see.
So it's 4 years since you started working for your own business. What's your experience with that? How was it? Do you feel,
I mean, it's been great. It's been non-stop, really, ever since I left working at the college. I started with started working on the 2020, but I was also working on stuff for James Fremantle, St James Park Press. I was working with stuff with Graham Moss as well for Incline Press and people like that, and a few other people. I did some books for Nick Hand from Letterpress Collective down in Bristol. So there's lots of these little things happening, and trying to work on them all at once was quite difficult, but now and again you sort of juggle with a few different projects, especially if they're quite small. You can fit it in, you get them out. So then so that was all right, and then but that plodded along quite happily as it was. And then Paul Sunup contacted me in March of, I think it was 22, something like that, and we're talking about I think he'd seen the 2020 and realised I could do multiples, and wanted someone to take care of some of the numbered editions. So we were talking about a few different editions. They didn't come off just due to time. So I thought I'd kind of lost that. I mean, I hadn't actually, to my detriment, I hadn't actually heard of Paul Sunup at that point. And then when I looked into it, thinking, because I was sitting in a pub with some friends and I got this email and I thought, well, this is obviously someone just, it's just someone having a laugh. Anyway, so I looked into it and I thought, oh, hang on, this is a big project
this
here.
Is something interesting, yeah.
This is something interesting, put my pint down, and then I realised that a lot of people that I follow on Instagram had already done work with him already. I didn't realise this is ridiculous. I thought, oh, hang on, so this is something, I better take this seriously, and then but it went a bit quiet, and then Paul came back with the idea of wanting me to do Slaughterhouse 5, and I've always been taught to just say yes to a job and then work out how to do it later, and so it's like just say yes and we can work it out. So we had a few design issues, design them kind of ideas, and we bounced them backwards and forwards, and we eventually came up with the idea that's out there now, and just someone neighbour walking past, and then we were just talking, and then suddenly these books arrived. So there was I think there were 26 boxes of books, and I was like, Jesus Christ, this is real. This is actually happening now.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's lots of emails banded around, but you never think it's going to happen, and then suddenly you get a knock, and then the boxes arrived on a pallet, and it's like, blimey. So we just had to crack on, and that was that, So yeah, and so I mean, that was this is what pretty much changed everything from the basement to the workshop. So this was my prototype copy, so I could get all the measurements and stuff like that. So it was, it was just a quarter leather. I say just quarter leather, but it was a lot of work really. So there was, it's a quarter leather blocking to the spine. It had a cloth end band that was made. I make all my end bands. I can't use the ready-made ones off the roll. It just feels physically wrong, especially when people are spending a fortune on these things. It doesn't feel right using a ready. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like I need to put an extra effort. So that one had like an indented label that was printed by Pat. Originally we were going to use that Mexican bark paper. I can't remember what it was called now, but it just wasn't blocking right. I mean, it was so lumpy, it wasn't having it. So we decided to letterpress it instead, and Pat Randall printed those for me. So it's a booger boot and background, and then the label on there itself. So that's indented. So that's quite nice. So that works really well. So, but I think the addition for that was 350. Thankfully, I didn't have to make the enclosures as well, because that would have probably tipped me over the edge.
Yeah, 350 sounds like a bit too much,
It's one thing.
Yeah.
It was a lot, but I thought this is an opportunity I can't really turn down. So, when someone puts their trust in you, something like that, it's a good feeling, but it's scary. But when someone's put their trust in you, you feel like you've got to go through with it. It's like, well, this is an opportunity that could really move the business forward. So that one. So I was still working in the basement then. So I think I said that I always like to be honest with everyone. So basically, it was kind of like I can do this, but it's going to have to be in batches. And then it got to the point where the batches suddenly became bigger batches, and then suddenly it was 140 I had to do or something the first batch. I thought that's a big batch, right? So I did them, and it was hilarious trying to move in the basement with those stacks of books. It was quite precarious. There was a constant fear of knocking them over. I mean, it was horrifying. But we got them out, and I was ready to move the next batch, the final larger batch. But I couldn't really do them at first. Then I was going into hospital for a small operation, so I couldn't do anything. And then this move was happening at the same time as well. So like when we finally moved in, I didn't have much in here, just a few bits and bobs. But a lot of the stuff was pre-cut for the last batch, and that flew. Literally, the last batch, I think it was with extras. I think there was 224 the last batch, and it only took about 5 weeks, something like stupid like that, because everything was pre-cut, and I had all the space, and I was like, bloody hell, this is all right. This, I can do a full edition now. So it was a good learning curve, and learning about how to post, all the customs and everything, and the forms you've got to fill out to get a huge amount of books, out of the country. It was a massive learning curve, but it stood me in good stead. So that was a great one.
I just wanted to add that if anybody of our viewers wants to see how an edition of books like that looks on the racking shelves that are behind Roger, just head to his Instagram account.
Oh, right,
there are some photos. Now it's empty, but so there are
it's
some
empty,
photos where it's filled to the top. Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, it's like it's one of those things when you first put the books on the shelf and they're just in book blocks, a lot more fit on than they do obviously than when they're bound in their cases. But it's like it's suddenly you've got to find more space and more space and more space. Think, well, where else am I going to put that? Christ, I've got a big enough place here. Surely there's enough. And it just feels like you've never got enough space. So, but yeah, it's at the moment it all works well. So, yeah, so that was that one, and I thought that was going to be it pretty much. And then I think it was like last March. That's when Paul got back to me about Life of Pi, and that just seemed to happen quite quickly. That one, the design was okayed very quickly. The books arrived, and it was just everything went quite smoothly with that one. Surprisingly, I never kind of think they're going to go that smoothly, but it went quite well. I mean, it was exhausting, rounding and backing 265 books by hand is not, you know, that was the main physical side of the whole job. But I think that took about a couple of weeks to round and back them all, I think, in the end. But by the end of that, my shoulders, you know, it's quite a physical job to do, really. So it was my shoulders ached quite a bit. So I had to take a few days off, you know, but that was okay. I mean, the leather work for that one, thanks to having the new splitter, which I'll show you when I do the tour, that changed everything. That changed absolutely everything. So because when you cut the amount of leather you need for that kind of job, so it was just a bit of a daunting stack of panels of leather that I was going to have to do by hand, by just hand edge pairing, pulling them through the Brockman one at a time, you know. And it's you know, it's never a stressless process pairing leather.
Yeah, that's true.
Knives
With all the imperfection of the leather pieces themselves,
no, and they're all slightly different. There's never going to be one exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's a natural product, you know. And you can ask, you know, it's putting it through the Brockman. I mean, you know, you could have, I mean, no razor blade is going to be the same. There's always a nick in one of the buggers, so you're going to have a little line, you know, and they don't last long. So you go through them because you don't want to. And again, no one tells you this. This is another. No one tells you about these these processes being stressful. You just see videos of people just whacking it through a Scharfix or a Brockman, and as if nothing, you know. So you try it, you destroy it in seconds. No one's shown you that the bad side of this. That, you know, one slip and it's all gone. You know, it's like. I mean, I remember telling people at the SOB that my trick for using a Brockman, I gave up with the Scharfix. I couldn't use it in the end. It just drove me mad. I think the little roller wheels made it go too quick for my person. So I used the Brockman for that sort of siding. I always find that when it's a little tip, you know. So when you've put a fresh blade in, and you've got it to the depth you want, I personally sacrifice bits of leather from the same skin to try and get it to the right depth first of all, and then by that point you've already blunted your blade slightly. So that means it's blunt, but that actually means that you've changed its depth. It's not the same that it was at the beginning. So when you change the blade, it's going to rip through that leather like nobody's business, and you're going to have nothing left. So again, just maybe sacrifice a couple of little bits just for one or two pulls to take that very first edge off, and you'll find the rest of your skin will come out a lot easier. Especially if you're only using one, just don't, you know, you've only got one bit, take your time, you know, just take your time. There's no rush. And always be careful when you're working with spine areas. It's always stiffer. So I personally put it face to face and give it a little roll on the stones first, just to try and soften it a little bit. Little bits like that. But yeah, don't go in with a fresh blade. You're gonna end up in, it's gonna be tears, you know, tears, awful. It's just, yeah, it's incredibly upset. Well, in my case, it's not tears, it's more swearing very loudly, you know, and you know, I always thought, like, you know, it was always amusing. If I was when I was working at home, you just don't have that barrier. You think because the ceiling is no one can hear you.
I just wanted to ask you how is it swearing very loudly when you have people walking by on the sidewalk in front of your workshop nowadays?
Well, no, but yeah, I mean, well, that's their problem. Do you know what I mean? It's, you know, as far as I'm concerned, this is where I work. If they don't like the swearing, just walk somewhere else. Do you know what I mean? But no, I mean, I don't. It's yeah, you know, or just me just stamping around in a rage, you know, because I'm very hard on myself. This is the issue I have, you know. So when something goes wrong, I really do. I lose it a little bit. But what can you do? You know, we're only human. We're not bloody machines. You know, things go wrong. You've got to accept it. But sometimes it can be stressful. Yeah, I mean, you know, the thing about things like Instagram and stuff, the thing we show on Instagram, it's all edited, obviously. You know, you're only going to show good stuff. You're not going to necessarily show bad. I do applaud people who do, you know, but I have a problem with that personally. But
that's why we have our live streams to talk about bad stuff as well.
Exactly. So it's good. So yeah, I mean, obviously things go wrong. I mean, things always go wrong. And you know, and especially when you're doing multiples like this, it's bound to happen, you know. and and sometimes if it doesn't go wrong, you wonder, you think that's, you just, there's days when I remember I was, before I started all these massive amount of projects, if I did like one or two full leather panels on the Brockman and they went seamlessly, I think, well, that's my day done. And there's no point in messing with it. It went really well. I'm not going to go any further. Job done. Let's go home. Do you know what I mean? Because it's why take it any further and start crying when you've torn the leather or God knows what else and you've ruined your day. Quit while you're ahead. Do you know what I mean? If it's worked, it's worked. But when you're doing an edition like this, you can't really do that. So you have to crack on. But it is difficult to explain to people that mistakes do happen. That's why, luckily, with a lot of the people that I work with, you get a lot of spares. You get a lot of spares just in case.
That's something I wanted to ask you as well. How does this work? Go with spares? Do you have any margin for error? Because obviously, if you need to make 100 copies and you're only given 100 copies, it's a lot of pressure on you.
Oh, that's a lot of pressure. I mean, there are. I'm not going to name names, but there are a couple who only give me exactly what I need, and that is incredibly stressful. And there's been times when they've cocked up, so they've had to send me more, which makes you wonder why they didn't send me the extras in the first place. But by the by, so yeah, I mean, I'm only assuming they've just got a massive amount of trust in what I do. But things go wrong all the time. Like with Life of Pi, I'll show you that. This is my. I don't think they've made a slipcase. I think they've gone for a Solander box for this now. So my prototype copy, I just made a little slipcase for it to keep it clean. But where was I going with this now? So yeah, I mean, with Life of Pi, the edition was 250, but I ended up binding 265. And then there was still just in case extras. You never know with transport and God knows what else, because they're going a long way. And then I think there were 15 or 20 or so, 15 I think, that I just didn't bother taking any further. That were spares that I left on the shelf just in case. So there were quite a few extras on that one, just which is always comforting because you have that to fall back on just in case. Because all these are paid for. It's not like there's the added pressure that they're already paid for. So someone's waiting for one of these books. And you want them all to have the best possible book, so they've all, you don't want them to have a dud, so there's always that nice knowledge, you've got something to back on if something goes really wrong.
And how strict are deadlines?
I don't really get that. I think some poor sods would really wish I did do deadlines a bit quicker. But I mean, I personally feel I work quite quick, considering what I have to do, and it's all by me. But there are some jobs that have been hanging around for a while. I mean, poor James has been waiting for the specials of 1984 for a long time. I've moved them on this week actually, so that's that stack there. They're all now ready for cases, but I've got to get some leather for that. But that was things only really wait mainly when there was a large Sunup order and the bench is full. You can't do anything else. There's not much else I can do really for that. Other things, if there's small projects, can slightly sort of like fit in between. I can get out a bit quicker for a little bit of a cash flow thing. So I did like after Christmas. We know what Christmas is like. It's an expensive time of year at the best of times, and then Mr. Taxman comes calling at the end of January. So I need, you need to keep things flowing cash flow wise. So I did a few little jobs that I knew I could get done quickly. So I did the special for Corvus Works for Chris Wakeling. That's that one. The Palatino book that I just did recently. So that one, I think I only did about 12 or 14 of those. I can't remember. I think it was 14. So there was, I got them done in about a week, because I could just get them out, and they went. So that was good. So that was instant cash flow gratification. And he was happy. Oh, they went smoothly. It was lovely. yeah, when a project like that goes out really quickly, but deadline wise, I don't really get. I mean, I think Paul really ideally wanted them from the moment of being between like sort of like 3 to 6 months or something like that. In the end, well, I think maybe not 6 months. I think he wanted maybe 3 to 5 months, but I think I did it in about five. From the moment, I mean, I had some family issues when the books first arrived, so I had to take some time off then. And then when I came back, it was just straight on with it. So I think pretty much they came in on time. But for those, I didn't make I've not made the enclosures for those again. So I had to send out a few early so that they could get measurements to start making the enclosures. So I think by now, I think they should be well on their way to be there. I mean, yeah. So I mean, a lot of times, I do get badgered. I do get badgered a bit with emails saying, "Oh, have you done those books yet, mate?" Stuff like that. I said, like, they're on their way. I tend to use why I tend to use Instagram mainly for. It's not kind of advertising, and it's probably a little bit of showing off. But then I think everyone does a little bit of showing off on Instagram. It's what it's for, isn't it? But mostly what I use Instagram is to people know that their books are being worked on. It's like
So it's progress
know,
update.
and everyone knows. Yeah, it's an update. I haven't forgotten you. Your work it's here. You can see it. Everyone can see it. It's being worked on. You can see it, and your customers can see it. It's being worked on. Don't worry. That's kind of what I use that for, really. So yeah, I think on the whole, people are relatively happy. I'm working on 2 editions at the moment that have been waiting for a long time. But one of them should go out pretty quickly, and the other one. So James is 1984. The books themselves, they need a lot of work because they're full leather with quite a bit of design work. And then there's some other volumes that are going to go with it, some companion volumes that I think there's 4 in each book for each book, and then there's going to be some fancy pants box that goes with them as well. So they'll take a little bit longer, but I think they're going to be well worth the wait. They're going to look quite smart, I think. So I think there should be 12 eventually of those. And then I'm working on an edition for Cordes Press, Kevin Cordes, of the Moon Moth, and so they're the ones on the shelves at the moment. I don't know if you can see they're up there and a bit further down. They're all now folded and pierced and ready for sewing, so I can crack on with those after the Easter break. So yeah, there's a constant flow of things. I'm also excited. There's a few other. I'll talk about them as well. There's a few other books coming that are coming in. So I think there's a few May, June, and stuff like that, which should go out relatively quickly. I think if I can get hold of the material quick enough. But yeah, I mean, to your initial question, as I digressed yet again, deadlines. There's always a talk about roughly when they want something. And then we kind of negotiate depending on what's feasible, and prices really. Sadly it's a business, so you have to talk about cash, which is always a bit vulgar, but what can you do? You have to do it. So yeah, I mean, the majority of the time, the deadlines are mainly for prototypes, so that they can take photographs or there's a private view. They're the ones that have to be really kind of like, they're more important really in that sense, so that they can get the customers in. So yeah, I've got to do. I think I've got a couple of prototypes coming up that might need to be done by the end of May or something like that. So I'll have to sort of crack on with those, but they shouldn't be too much of an issue. But sometimes they're the actual book if like someone like Pat has already printed it. Or sometimes they're just blank books, so they can be for photographic purposes for their websites and stuff like that. So as long as the cover looks all right. But they're the ones I really only get proper deadlines for. The rest is a bit more negotiable, thankfully.
Good. I'll read a couple of comments we got since my last interruption. We have Mick Di Marsico, Italia ciao a tutti. Ciao, Nick. And also on YouTube we had Paul Beckland. Hello from Washington DC. So yeah, nice to have you here again. If any other of our viewers decide to share their location with us. Well, not the exact location, but well, from which country, which town, city they are joining us. That's always nice to see the geography of our viewers. And also we have Dave Turnbull. Life without mistakes is not life, and I guess that's well, first that's true. It's just impossible.
Yeah.
And one of the things one of my teachers in bookbinding told me once that quite often the level of of proficiency, of mastery of the craft for bookbinder or for many other craftsmen, craftspeople or artisans as well is not how good you can do your job, but how good you can fix your mistakes.
Yeah, there's that side of it, definitely. Oh God, yeah. I mean, and I remember like one of my, one of the people, like Steve, when I worked with him, and we'd do stuff quite a lot, and then I don't know, an end paper would go down badly or something like that, and he'd be like, and I'd be like beside myself, because I've just knackered a book or something, and they'd be like, relax, nobody died, right? It's a book, we can sort it out, or we just, there's a spare, relax, nobody's dead. Do you know what I mean? So, when you kind of put it into perspective, it's all right. It's a book. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, but it's like, I mean, I get a lot of comments on Instagram just going on about how, you're a machine, you're a machine. And I said, no, I'm not really. I'm just a bloody human being. I'm just, and I cock up quite regularly, to be fair. It's just life. What can you do?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Pasha, did you have anything else?
I wanted to ask you a bit about if you only work and ship it out, or do you work locally for local printers?
Yeah. Well,
and also a somewhat related question: are there other binders and printers in your area? Are there any exhibitions or anything? What's the book culture like?
Well, I mean, so for the first question, it seems to be mainly for presses that are, in the south or abroad. I do now and again do work, as I said, with my printer, letterpress printer friend Nick, for him now and again, but not very often. But so, and he's only just down the road, basically, just along the canal. So for that, it's mainly just external, for as in people that are not in the local area. Occasionally get people walking past and want and say they want a repair doing or a guest book made or something like that, and then they usually find out how much it costs and they kind of walk away. That happens a lot. I've seen a lot of Bibles walk through his door, a lot of Bibles. So then that's so we'll see about that. Book culture. Well, there's me here in Shipley. I'm sure there's a lot of people who that work in their basements and sheds. I'm sure there's bound to be. There always is something like that. Then there's Stephen Conway in Halifax, which is only about half an hour's drive away. I mean, there's a lot of people in this local area that will probably be doing stuff like this, but a lot of people don't necessarily want to handle a huge amount of books, multiples. So it's at the moment I'm comfortably in that little pigeonhole that I can take care of a lot of books rather than just one or two. But yeah, there's a lot of people in the surrounding Yorkshire and Lancashire area that we used to have. There was another lass called Moniza from Lotus Blue Book. I don't know if you know about her. She does lovely sort of like journals and stuff. She used to live in Bradford, Thornton Way. Now I think she's moved to the Lake District. So yeah, there's been a few. There is a lot of people around here. At various levels of kind of of businesses and stuff. So it could be just like hobbies, or it could be small businesses and stuff like that. But I think at the moment I'm probably one of the only ones around in Shipley that's got an actual shop, if you like. I think not. Who knows? There might be loads. Yeah, I remember when I got made redundant from my first teaching job. I then discovered that the amount of creatives that lived in the local area was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And there was at least 3 down my street. And we were all kind of like suddenly helping each other out, working on different projects. And it was like that was an eye opener. It didn't, it's like when you're working in a different institution, your mind is kind of focused on that, and you don't realize what's happening just literally on your doorstep. So that was quite an eye opener. But yeah, as for the book culture, I mean, we have a lot of lovely bookshops and bookstores that do a lot of kind of nice things with first editions and stuff like that. We used to have a lot more that used to do lovely second-hand bookshops. They seem to have vanished. But yeah, book culture-wise, it's not huge. Shipley's not massive for that really, but it does have Saltaire down the road, Salt's Mill, that has a lovely bookshop that puts on events and signings and stuff like that, and that's really lovely. But yes, at the moment, the only two book ones I know really that have kind of got anything business-wise is either me or Stephen Conway, really, in Halifax. That's basically it. Yeah.
We have Sue Jackson on YouTube. Sue Jackson from Hertfordshire, UK, but originally from Huddersfield. And also Dave Turnbull mentioned that he's from Scotland. So yeah, UK is well represented today. that's
good.
nice.
That's good. Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it.
I also wanted to ask you about teaching. Do you do any teaching now? How does it go? What's your work related to the Society of Bookbinders? Well, we saw each other on the seminar, but what's happening there?
Yeah, I mean, I only did that once on the seminar. I'm not a member of any of the societies, so I don't really do much. That one at the SOB was the first and the only one I've done really. And I remember I was asked to do it by Dominic, and I didn't really know. I think he asked Stephen Conway first, and then Steve said no, so I did it. So that was that. You know, I got kind of like pushed into the thing. I wasn't too sure at the time. It took me a little while to think, like, what do people actually want to know what I do? Could it, you know, what I do, is it that interesting really, you know, edition binding? But it seemed to go all right. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just, you know, just put on a bit of a show and took some samples, you know, examples of what I do, and it seemed to go down all right. Teaching wise, mainly it's kind of, I used to do a lot of teaching at Stephen's studio, a workshop in Halifax, and I did a few, and I still do a few now for West Yorkshire Print Workshop. They're based in Murfield, but I think they've got a new place now, Huddersfield. I still do some for a company called a place called Artisan near Ripon. They do kind of like craft courses and stuff like that. Do sort of beginners courses and slightly intermediate ones for them, and the same with West Yorkshire Print Workshop. I'd like to do more here.
Do you have space for that?
Yeah, the bench, I think I worked out, I reckon I can get 6 around it comfortably, and it's nice, you know, it's a cozy situation. And everything's here, isn't it? You know what I mean? All the presses are here, all the materials are here. If I forget anything, I just have to go to a drawer. You know, it's nice, you know, it's comforting for that. And I only have to walk down the road. It's a 5-minute walk from home. It's lovely, you know. So that would be nice. But obviously when I'm working on an edition, the bench is full. So it's difficult to actually try and schedule in these kind of like workshops. I've done a couple for groups, which were great because they know each other. Everyone's happy. Everyone's friendly with each other. They've all come with the same idea. It's lovely that. So I did a couple. I did one for a ceramics group that are based in Leeds. That was nice, and one for a conservation group based in Harrogate. And yeah, and that you know they're great. So but they kind of like seem to be on the basic level. So I do beginners courses where we do single section binding, the basics, and then maybe some slightly more advanced with like, you know, multi-section, like, you know, flat back books and stuff like that. As soon as I tried to advertise, I mean, back in the day, when I tried to advertise anything a little bit further, like do maybe some rounding and backing or something like that, never got any takers. It all went quiet, you know. So I thought, well, I'm not going to, you know, flog a dead horse here and advertise for more for rounding and backing and stuff if no one's going to want to do it, you know. So, you know, but then it was always the way. It's like you get asked, do you do courses? Will you do this? And you go, yeah, I'll put on a course. You know, sometimes I was even asking, when would you like that course to happen? You know, just so that it could actually happen. And I never got enough takers. Never got enough takers for them. So it's difficult to sort of, you know, feel the urge to do a course when there's always that in the back of your mind that you might have to cancel. You know, and they always take a lot of preparation. You know, it's never a, you know, there's a lot of prep and that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, I'm quite happy to do courses, but it's just it's a bit of a knock to the ego when you set up these courses and everyone's like, oh yeah, great, and then no one books on it. You know, so it's like, okay, fair enough. You know. what can you do? You know.
I guess it's not a paradox, but it's a tricky problem, tricky situation that there are some processes you would like to dedicate courses to, like rounding and backing you mentioned, but it's a separate process which is sort of, if you take it out of a longer course,
Yeah.
there are not many people who are going to go for a dedicated course like that, and that's a bit upsetting because, well, you need to learn that, but then you don't have the opportunity to do that because there are no courses that are dedicated to that theme with outside of larger courses, and
Plus, a lot of times, I mean, you know, it's like one of those things where there are certain elements, certain processes you quite happily do at home with simple tools, you know, on your kitchen table, and it's fine and it works. And as soon as you start to do rounding and backing, you're going to need a decent press. You're going to need backing boards. You're going to need a hammer. So it's not something that one would necessarily want to do at home later. So a lot of people, quite rightly, you know, I want to learn how to do, but I want to be able to do it again later. So there's always that possibility, you know, for workshop rental, like I do at, you know, London School Centre of Book Arts and places like that. But it's a big space. But then again, I don't really want other people in it mucking about. You know what I mean? So, you know, there's that kind of side of things. So yeah, so I can understand why people don't want to learn more advanced processes if they can't necessarily do it at home. That makes perfect sense. But you know, it'd be nice to actually sort of like, you know, do, you know, a course over a number of weeks, say, where they start with, you know, basics and then maybe learn something different, and then it's, you know, they end up with a number of books by the end of it or something like that. That'd be really nice. But again, it's like there's quite a lot of courses like that already out there, you know, and it's like, and people seem to be quite happy to do those. Whether, you know, if they would, I can't imagine they'd be happy to come in necessarily. I mean, we're not living in, you know, in the Cotswolds or something like that. I'm in the middle of Bradford. You know, it's not, you know, easy to, you know, there's not plenty of places you can stay quite happy. You know, it's not as salubrious to come and visit here than it would be to go somewhere, you know, in the middle of nowhere and have a lovely, you know, book holiday. You know, it's not that kind of place. But, you know, I'm happy to offer it. You know. Yeah, so, you know, it's a tough one. I mean, the teaching before that, I mean, so I was teaching at colleges and stuff. But again, it was you know, it would be basic flat back bindings. And a lot of the time, the students weren't necessarily there because they wanted to be there. They were there because it was part of what they were being taught. So they were like scheduled in by their tutor. So they weren't always happy to be there, you know, which doesn't make you feel any greater by teaching someone.
That's a bit strange. What kind of major would that be with
the ages? So your age groups
add-on?
Yeah, so your age groups for those courses, you know, you would start with like maybe an ND called National Diploma. So they're usually around about sort of like 16, sort of 17. And then you can go up through the degree called foundation courses and stuff like that. And then you've got like more the access courses, which seems to be catered more for adult learners that come back into education and things like that. So you get a really wide range of age groups, but a lot of the time, it'll be just like a scheduled in like induction into making a quick book, you know, and they wouldn't necessarily, you know, they'll be split into groups and they all have to do it regardless of whether they want to do it or not, you know. So some would, you know, would get a kick out of it, some might not, but that's natural. But you know, you get some who would bloody moan about it all the time, you know, and it's not great when you're trying to teach them. There's someone moaning in the background, you know, it's not great, you know. But that kind of attitude did change over the years. I mean, when I first started teaching, it didn't seem to be that as much of that. There's a lot of people really just getting on with it and enjoying it and stuff. And then as years progressed, and I can't put my finger on why, various possibilities, but people would, you know, not enjoy it as much, you know. I mean, at the end of the day, it could have been me, you know. Maybe I wasn't enjoying teaching as much, and I was, you know, just maybe just being a grumpy old git and not making the whole thing pleasant for them, you know. So there's that possibility. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I left in the end. You know, it's just like, you know, if you're not happy, then why stay? You know, you're not doing anyone else any favors. So yeah, the teaching side, I still want to do it. But you know, it is mainly finding time and having the availability of space. You know, when there's hundreds of books on the bench, it's not really a good time to teach groups. But yeah, that was a plan. I did have a plan at some point to do one of those things where, like I mentioned, where it's like, you know, once or twice a week for any number of weeks, doing some sort of like projects where you work through a number of binding styles and end up with a lovely little slipcase with them all in or something. That's always quite pleasant. Always fancy doing something like that. But it's finding a time really. So we'll see what happens with that. That's something for the future, maybe.
Yeah. Well, good if it works out. So Dave Turnbull wrote, "I could spend days browsing second-hand bookshops, and that's definitely something I like to do. And usually when we travel with my wife, I get lost in some second-hand bookshop, and she's like, "Time.
Yeah, time. Yeah,
We need to move on."
It's very easy to get lost in those bookshops. Sadly, as I said, there's not many. We used to have at least 2 really good ones, heading towards Saltaire. I mean, they were amazing. Well, maybe 3 actually. They've gone now. I don't know whether they just retired and had enough or whatever. You know, it was just being able to walk around those shops. Is a pleasure that, you know, isn't very often afforded to you, especially if you're going, like, say, if you're going on a day trip with the family and you're walking down a street and you see a bookshop, you know you want to walk into it, but you know you're going to get pulled out of it in seconds, or your kids want to join you, and that's lovely, they want to join you, but then their attention span goes quicker than yours, and so you have to come out again. You're thinking, oh, I could have spent another hour or so anyway. Do you know what I mean? It's like that's not going to happen, but that's, you know, it's the way it is, you know. So yeah, it's not often you get a chance to do that on your own, but you never know. Yeah. One day maybe, little day trip out.
Yeah, use every opportunity you have. Paul O'Dan on Facebook, hello from New Jersey, USA, and also Dave Turnbull. I'm slowly saving up to do some courses like those, like the courses you mentioned, and that's definitely an issue, because, well, I remember quite well. It was already almost 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I started teaching bookbinding, and then I realized that, well, I need to study a bit more to feel more comfortable teaching, and I started looking for courses, and we lived in Moscow at that moment in Russia, and I found a couple of courses, well, quite professional courses in Moscow, and they were really, the prices were really steep, so it was really expensive for me, and I started looking for more stuff. I checked some courses in the UK, and they were insanely expensive for me, and I found courses at the American Academy of Bookbinding in the US, in Colorado, and surprisingly, tuition plus plane tickets, it was cheaper than doing these courses in Moscow. So I decided, well, okay, and I applied, I applied for a scholarship, and they offered me a scholarship, which was absolutely amazing. So with scholarship, I was even able to cover my plane tickets, living accommodation there, and the remaining amount of tuition fees, for less than I would have spent on these courses in Moscow. And I went to the US, and it was fun, and it's a great location. So but.
Yeah, I mean, there's opportunities. I mean, it's like there's a lot of places where, you know, I looked into, because there's a lot of holes in my knowledge, and I really want to kind of, you know, address those. Like, you know, I thought, well, maybe I could try and get some, you know, funding or something like that, and I've never been able to achieve it. Whenever I've tried to get funding, I've either not been able to get all the information I need or require, or I'm just absolutely rubbish at filling in those forms, quite possibly. That's probably the easier answer. I've never been able to get the funding for it. So it's kind of like, it's a bit depressing. And funding's always been one of those kind of dirty words for me, you know, especially mainly because during, you know, the COVID times when everyone was getting funding for, or grants for, you know, for this and that, and I just became self-employed, and so there was no chance of me getting any kind of, you know, government grant to help me out. I didn't have any premises, so I didn't get any money for that, you know. So from then on, it was always like I was always not eligible, you know. So then on, the idea of getting funding just maybe just gets my back up a little bit. Do you know what I mean? So I've never been able to do it. So I just thought, well, I bloody well do it myself. Do you know what I mean? If I can't get funding, I'll just find a way of doing it myself, you know. so yes, there's a few courses I want to get on with, and sort of meet up with some other bookbinders and learn a few tricks of the trade. Because my things like I'm honest with you, my hand tooling is appalling. So I'd love to do a few courses in that, and and leather sort of dyeing and stuff. I'm not that au fait with that kind of thing. I've never really had to do it, so I've never really taught myself or had a chance to learn. I'd love to have a go at that. Like I'm working on a book at some point with Pat Randall. It's been on the cards for years, but it's a book called The Birds of France. I'm not going to even embarrass myself by saying it in French, but like it's a lovely book by Peter Allen. So lots of pochoir and stuff, and the colours are phenomenal. So I need to address that. I want to do something with those colours. So I've actually been in contact with Tom McEwen about going up there and having a play with him about with his dyeing leather and stuff, because he's pretty damn good at it. You know what I mean? So let's face it.
Yeah.
So
and that's a good moment to invite our viewers to check some of the videos we had with Tom McEwen, because he talks about Tom, his process quite a bit there. So check our YouTube.
I mean, I knew Tom. I knew of Tom through Stephen Conway, because they're good friends and stuff and that. But I actually met him at that SOB conference, and we had a good laugh and we had a good chat. So at some point, I mean, I was expected to go up just after Christmas, but that never happened. But at some point, we'll get together and we'll play with some leather and dyes and stuff for that project. That'll be rather lovely. I'm really looking forward to that one. And I just it would be nice to sort of like go and just learn from people who do gold tooling on a regular basis and know how to do it really well. I'd love to learn that a bit more, because I've killed more leather than I've actually worked on properly, to be fair. But so a lot of my work's blocked from the blocking machine and stuff like that, rather than hand tooling. So that would be nice to sort of like stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's addressing those issues with courses is difficult. When I first started out, I wanted to learn how to work, do like fine leather bindings, and I think I was booked on through work, a course at Shepherd's in London, and I was really looking forward to it. I think it was going to be I think it was just shy of 500 quid. I think it was, which I wasn't going to be able to afford at the time, and just for a weekend. Luckily, I'd have had friends to stay with or something like that, otherwise, and a bit of accommodation on top. And so I was really looking forward to that. And then it got cancelled because I was the only person on it, And so it was like, oh, damn it, I was really looking forward to this. And so that was another kind of stumbling block. So there's that always happens as well. But yeah, the courses, really pricey, a lot of them. But then sometimes, it's just the way it is, you either do it or you don't. But then it can hold back people who are really committed to actually learning, rather than just the people who can afford it as a hobby. I feel like a lot of people, that seems to be where a lot of the times, again, it could be a class thing again. Do you know what I mean? We talked about right from the beginning, where people that can afford these courses, are they taking it further as a business? Or is it just a hobby and they'll just do it once and then that'll be that,
Yep.
I'd like to think people will take it further. There's a lot of that. I mean, I don't want to start being a militant old fart, but you've got to start getting that kind of thing where a lot of the design world, I mean, some of these design binders are absolutely phenomenal. And it's a pleasure to see this work, and I kind of think, so I mean, are they making a living out of this work, or is it something on the side? Is it a hobby that they do really, really well? I don't know. I've never been able to actually ask this question, because I don't want to. You might be able to ask these questions. I don't. If I ask these questions, I feel like I'm being rude. You know what I mean? It's like I want to know. I mean, are you? I want to know. Are some of these really amazing, binders earning a living? I mean, that's, to me, I feel like I have to earn a living. This is my job. It's not like a thing I do like a side hustle. It's what I do every day.
That's one of the reasons why we quite often ask our guests about apprentices or any employees, would they want to have them and or not, and what it's is connected to, what issues it is connected to? Because quite often we get an answer, well, yes, I probably would like to have a person to help me, but firstly, it will eat up all of my income. And secondly, I need to teach this
There is
person
that.
for a year, and then this person leaves, and I need to look for another apprentice. And these two are, well, these issues are relevant for many small businesses, but somehow for crafts like bookbinding, they're even more,
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
important and damaging.
yeah.
And so,
Funding is, I think, yeah, I think funding, yeah, funding is always the kind of like the crucial element for any kind of small business when it comes to hiring. You need to have that. You don't want to pay someone pence for doing a good job, because that's just not right. You want to give someone a living wage, and maybe more if possible. So the funding issue is always a big part of it. But yeah, I mean, we'd all work. I'd love to have people working for me. I mean, it gets lonely for a start. I mean, it's nice to actually chat with people from time to time. But so that's a big. I'd love to have someone working here on a permanent basis. But the funding side, as you say, it is the big issue, because you've got massive overheads. You've got your rent, you've got your bills, then you've got your own mortgage, and you've got that, your family. Everything has to come out of what you earn, and it's not a massive earner. You're not going to get rich being a bookbinder, let's face it. So you've got to try and juggle it all. So I mean, there are ways. I mean, there's ways of getting funding for apprenticeships and stuff. But as I've already said, I'm absolutely appalling at filling in these forms, so I can't imagine that happening. But that'll be the next stage, I think, trying to find a way of being able to sustain an apprentice and not do them out of cash. There's nothing worse than feeling like, for me personally, that I'm not giving someone the right pay for the right day's work. I can't do that. That's just against everything I believe in. So that's why a lot of the times, back in the early days, I said, when I was getting asked if I wanted any interns and stuff, they were saying, you don't have to pay me. You just no, I think I do actually have to pay you, and I can't. So I won't. So I won't be able to. I'll need to be able to pay you. So I can't do that. There was a lot of time people would be doing internships for nothing, and I can't do that. It's just not on. So yeah, funding is the biggest thing for that sort of thing. But I mean, if more large editions come in, then I'll be able to pay someone a reasonable wage. That wasn't a plug for my work, by the way. I'm just saying. That's the way it's got to be, I think.
I guess it's time to switch to the workshop tour. I will read a couple of last comments, but we won't really answer them. But I just wanted to mention them because, well, they're worth mentioning in my opinion. So again, Dave Turnbull wrote, I got interested in bookbinding because I saw a medieval book and wanted to understand the amount of work that went into making. And that's a good point. And that's something we discussed on our live streams and podcasts quite a lot, which is, it is so upsetting how bad medieval books are exhibited all the time. You can't really see any structural elements or whatever. And another comment from Martin Hogg. I think tuition fees and the idea of paying for a degree change student perceptions of what to expect in place of learning regarding enthusiasm, etc. At least in the UK.
That is quite possible. Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, definitely.
So should we do a workshop tour?
I think that was a definite factor. Why not? Why not? So I'm going to unplug the computer and walk you around. You'll be under my arm. That's how sweet is that. Lovely. All right. So, okay. Where do we start? Let's go. So, okay. So, through there's the kitchen. You don't want to go in there. So we've got, this is my kind of shelving that I have all my jobs that I'm working on at the moment. So that's the kind of my to-do shelves, basically. So at the moment we have up there and there's the books for Cordes Press. They're already pierced, collated, ready to go. I may do the tipping in beforehand as well. The illustrations for those are there as well. There's, what else is there over here? if you get dizzy, let me know. I'll stop. Then you got down there is going to be a book for Hilary Painter and Pat. That's going to be a lovely one, a big format book. There's nothing else really there. It's unnervingly empty, I have to say. So, and then we have these little bits of there's just stuff, loads of type in the corner.
Yeah, nice type cabinet there.
Nice type cabinet, yeah. So there's a couple of cases, a few cases, not a great deal. The idea was I'd slowly fill it up, but it just seemed to stop. And little bits and bobs. Got my little Adana that I print stuff now and again, mainly my business cards these days, but that's what that's there for. Loads of plates. This is all the foil, and there's my foil blocker. That was probably one of the first things I bought that was expensive, and I actually bought that by mistake. I meant to press bid, and I pressed buy it now, and it was quite a scary day. My mate Nick was there at the time. He'd know what happened. It was very unnerving, especially when you ring Becky, my wife, and I was like, "Hello," and the first thing she said was, "What have you done?" And so she knew that. Yeah, so that's what that was. Yeah, that was fun. Presses. So these came to me in various states of disrepair, really, and the people seem to love to paint everything in the whole thing. So I had to do a lot of stripping and cleaning, and then they all got lovingly restored. That one was restored by my friend Stuart. Did a lovely job on that. So that's some work from my friend Nick, lowering from the print project. If you want, I mean, they're amazing. Check him out. He's the print project in Shipley. Then we go around here. We have my backing press, which we were talking about earlier, that I've never actually had a chance to use yet. I'm too busy, but I will play with that at some point. Plants, building work. It's been going on since bloody June. Thank you very much for that. My laying press, that I love it. It's a beautiful thing. Works a treat. Over here, what else we have? I'm trying to get that angle right. So over this side of the workshop, we've got my lovely new board shear, which was it took ages to get it here, but God, it was a crazy job getting it here. But that company Schmet was it Schmet or Schment? I don't know how to pronounce
Schmet,
it.
yeah.
Bookbinder. Schmet. They were amazing. They were lovely. I definitely recommend them. Wonderful people. Coat hooks, boring. And then you got the window over here, and so we've got the leather splitter. Sorry, that changed everything for me. We're working on Life of Pi. I think if I were to do it all by hand, I think all the leather for that would have taken me around about 3 weeks, and I probably would, it would have not been many fingers left. It would have been quite sore. I did all the splitting. It took me 3 days, and then I did it in batches of 20, not to overheat it. And then every time I did the first 20, I would then just edge pair it just gently.
Could you talk a bit about how it works and what it is? Because I don't think I've seen anything like it. I like the knobs, the 70s styling and all that.
I won't turn it on because it can get noisy. But basically what it is you have a blade. There's 2 wheels kind of either side, like big wheels, with a blade that goes around. And then it actually, you see, if you look at those, can you see the 2 blue wheels in there?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're grinding stones, so they sharpen the blade, which is fantastic. And then you just literally, you can adjust it. I say just, you have to get used to it. It's nothing that easy, you know what I mean? But you feed the leather through this area here, and then it gets split literally, and it comes out the other end. And so you end up with, you can go, all this stack of leather here, that's all the suede from the back of all the Life of Pi. That's basically, so, I don't know what to do with it, to be honest. There's got to be something I can do with it. I just, loads to bin it. It's just, I just don't know what to do with it at the moment, but I'll find something. So yeah, and then you can, you can take stuff down from a full thickness, 0.9 or something like that. You can take it all the way down to 0.2 quite happily, and a full panel, so it's quite frightening. So that saved a lot of time, and was well worth the investment. So the idea is at some point I can probably do some splitting for people as a side hustle if need be. But you know, at the moment, I'm just playing with it myself.
I assume it's not cheap. It looks
No,
very
well,
professional.
that one I think new is about it was about 6,500, but I got a little bit of funding from a local governing body. The only time I've ever managed to get funding, who are amazing. You know, no one was more shocked than I was. To be fair, I've never been. No one said yes to me, never. You know, and so I got a little bit knocked off. I got about a third knocked off, so that helped. And that was good. That was the one time that the builders out there were any good. They helped me get it in, so that was quite nice because it's heavier than you think. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
And what is it with UN funding? Do they look at you and say, "You'll be all right on your own"?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Literally, it was just like it was a local funding body. I think Bradford's going to be like the sort of like city of culture in 2025. So they're just chucking money at it at the moment. So I thought, well, now's the time to give it a go. I got some, advice from other people, and so I just said, look, I do this. I need this because I'm getting older, and my hands are going to get, we're going to start to feel it, And they visited, they went, yeah, sure, that's it. And I was like, okay. And so I just filled out a couple of forms and they had to come and photograph it to prove that it actually existed, before they gave me the money, so I had to pay the money up front first. Then they gave me the bit after. But it was all pretty seamless. It was quite good. So what else? Then they got my big guillotine. That's fantastic. The thing about I'm happy most about the equipment that I have here, it's fit for purpose. It's not hobby stuff. It does the job proper. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, and that's what I've always been quite happy about. And then in this corner, we've got some planchettes with with stocks of pattern paper and stuff. And then other shelving of just stuff, editions where I've kept all the jigs and maybe some bits and bobs that I've used for those, just in case it happens again. It's always better to keep it there. And any notes, I always keep them together so that if I have to go back, I know I've got all the measurements written down somewhere and stuff like that. And there's other jobs there that at the moment have gone a bit quiet, but we may come back to those. And then a bit of board storage, and then that was my. Let me see that. That was my original bench that used to be in my basement that I used to work on. Now it's mainly for paring leather. So I've got the nice stone area there. It's where I sharpen the blades.
A very good looking bench.
It is really nice, isn't it? So I didn't want to just get rid of it. I thought it's got to have some decent use when I move in here. And then my knives and the Brockman that I use regularly. So I think, and then over here, so that's the bench. So the kind of view when you walk in through the front door is pretty much like that kind of thing. That's what I see every morning. And then look over there. So yeah, it's a really nice space. I'm very lucky, to be fair. And it just it's a really good place to work. And that's all I can really say about that one. I'm just a very lucky boy to have it, really.
Nice. Thank you. I wanted to say firstly that that's probably the last opportunity for anyone watching our live stream to post any questions if you have any questions. And also, I wanted to make a couple of announcements. We have several other live streams scheduled already. So before Roger leaves us, I wanted to talk a bit about our schedule in the upcoming weeks. So next week we have a talk with Kate Holland with her 1.5 million valued Breakfast at Tiffany's binding covered with diamonds, and she will be joining us live from New York Book Fair, where she's going next week, obviously, and also will
Do you need some help?
So that will be next week, and we'll probably have a bit of a look of the book fair as well. Not only talking about this binding, because that's a good opportunity to to see it. Also, she will be there with Ian Khan, a bookseller, a rare bookseller. We already had him on our live stream or podcast before, but he agreed to talk to us a bit more this time. In 2 weeks, we are our researcher Friedrich Sommerfeld will join us to talk about the issues of copyright in bookbinding, book crafts, and everything like that, because it's something really important and something many people do not understand at all. How you can use images of other people or companies in your bindings, what are the limitations when you can't use them, what are the issues, what are the consequences of doing that. Then on the 20th of April we will have Nicolene Mayer and Richard Minsky. Nicolene just bought Richard's workshop, bought out Richard's workshop, and she will be sort of continuing his work and picking up his processes. And that's something that we wanted to discuss, because that doesn't happen very often when one person buys out other person bindery and the business. So that's an interesting topic, and I sort of grabbed this opportunity to talk about it. I'm sure it will be a very interesting talk. And then we already have something scheduled for the 27th of April as well. We'll have an Italian bookbinder, Luigi Castiglione, joining us. He does some crazy stuff.
He's amazing.
He does some really interesting stuff and lots of experimental things. So April should be impressive. And we'll talk about the further streams later. So thank you, Roger, for being with us today.
Absolutely welcome.
It was a great talk. It was very interesting to learn about your process, and I'm sure it was insightful for many of our viewers and many of our future viewers. I'll, as usual, I will post some snippets, some shorter parts of this talk on Instagram and TikTok and whatever. Subscribe, please subscribe to our accounts. Please consider becoming our patron on Patreon. All the links are in the description. Please check links to Roger's website and Roger's Instagram. Subscribe to Roger's Instagram. And thank you everyone who stayed with us throughout this talk. And, as usual, we'll stay here for a minute longer while the stream drops on Facebook and YouTube. But that's mostly it. People are posting things, and well, thank you to our viewers as well for staying with us today.